Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
For artists that want to follow a realistic style, I don't know that you necessarily have to overthink about an influence like me or any other painter who does realism. You can certainly get a lot from the pieces that we've done, maybe even imitate some of those compositions, but I think you'll find your own way once you're just studying reality, which is what I would do. I mean, if I'm going to look at people, things, photographs, it's beneficial to start shooting your own if you can get into that. And these days, since everybody's got a camera, that's not so much of an issue anymore. Being able to study life as the basis for something is the best. I had the longest problem of thinking I needed to have everybody and every element be perfect before I could use it as a reference source. And so it took me a long time to realize how flexible the basis of the human form is. I've posed for myself on loads of paintings. It's a process of getting your mind comfortable with what you're building off of. And at a certain point, I would say accept that you're going to feel like you're not seeing it until you've seen it. You know, that maybe you do need to have a thing look like a thing exactly before you're painting from it.
Due to the following CBS School Break special, Magnum PI will not be seen today. It will be broadcast tomorrow in the regular time period.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. You'll hear a little technical snafus here. It's To the Outer Limits. John Suntress here. And we have a full house today. And here we are. Absolutely. Here, Gabe, I'll even move you so that, as always, you are on.
Thank you.
Absolutely. But joining us tonight, as you can see, our full lineup. We've got Gabe Hardman, William Meyer, Jeff Parker, and Ian Brill. Good to see everybody.
Hello.
It's good to be here.
I feel like everybody got a haircut. I don't know.
I didn't get a haircut.
Something happened.
Yes, and as we showed the title card tonight, it is episode 29, I believe, a feasible study of the
feasibility study. Yeah,
feasibility study.
Yeah, and it's a really good episode, I think, which is thankful at this point in the season. But as with many really good Outer Limits episodes, it was one of the first ones that they shot, and it ended up, having, I think, to some extent, visual effects problems, but also censorship problems that, and also just reading the script, I would guess production issues that they had to deal with in putting this together into like a workable hour of TV. But with all of that, I think that this episode really works, and it's a really interesting, thoughtful, hour of TV.
Other initial thoughts, everybody?
Ian Brill.
This is not only one of my favorite episodes of The Outer Limits, I'll even say this is maybe one of my favorite episodes of television, like ever. It's up there with Demon with a Glass Hand in terms of just being just a wonderful hour of television that has such humanity within a very out there concept.
What do you think, Gabe? Or I'm sorry, what do you think, Jeff? Excuse me. I was looking at Jeff when I said Gabe.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
What your thoughts, your opening thoughts on the episode?
It's very solid. Hardman was nice enough to lend me the script so that I could see you know, this one was like I had some really profound thing to say about it is extremely overwritten because he's clearly like still in prose mode, but there's great stuff in it, even if you don't get all of it in the episode, and most of it's in there. I guess somebody should tell people who didn't watch the thing at the beginning. The main thing they changed from the script, that they go into the Outer Limits front loading mode that he's not doing, which is go ahead and tell everybody what's happening at the beginning of the episode. A bad bitten birdie comes from another planet. And the funny thing was, then when I saw the script, I'm like, he described it as a shuttlecock.
Yeah.
He did. Yes.
He wanted it to look like that, and they took it really literally. And it's funny because it's kind of a cool design, and it reminded me of and I'm sure Hardman has like since he has a billion times more experience at doing storyboards than I do. But I remember when I would storyboard TV commercials, a lot of times I would just be drawing because I was on really rough stuff, pretty close to a shoot. And I would just draw something like just to fill space, like a lamp, and maybe make it a fat lamp. And then later I would come in after I was preloaded at the craft service table, and I'd see prop people, and they were stressing out trying to find that lamp, like calling around. And does that happen? It's like,
oh sure,
no,
yeah,
guys,
yeah.
like,
I mean,
it's like the director didn't ask for that. It's just whatever I did at the time.
Yeah. But actually, there are many occasions where I will do something that is just my garbage storyboard design. It's about telling the story, right? And yet ideas have this tendency to like stick around. So if you're writing a screenplay or you're writing something that somebody else is going to execute and produce, be careful of what you call something, right? Like, I mean, if you say that it's a shuttlecock, if you say that it's a badminton, whatever you call it, yeah, they're gonna make that, right? Like they're gonna take it literally and make that, and but I don't know. It doesn't hurt the show. William, what were your broad feelings before we get into the details?
My broad feelings. I like this one a lot as it tied into other episodes where the structure is you have a domestic situation that is fraught with tension, and then you introduce a malevolent outer limits monster creature spirit thing entity that stresses the relationship, like Architects of Fear or Cry of Silence next season, and then the relationship comes to a head and they kind of resolve their issue through this exterior situation. So I really like it for that.
Yeah,
for that reason.
Drama. Yeah, the actual drama with human beings is used in a way that comments on the big stuff and the big sci-fi stuff, and the big sci-fi stuff comments on the human stuff.
Yeah, they reflect each other really well.
It feels like they took a John Cheever story and threw it in space.
It's a what and threw it in space?
A John Cheever story.
A John Cheever story.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's actually what's so strong about it, that that it's driven by these characters, but it's not just about grafting that John Cheever story onto a sci-fi thing. It's integral to it. The issues that they're dealing with, the doctor's wife feeling like she's like she can't live in this sort of stifling world with him, where she's not allowed to be the it's in the script. It's much more explicit that she is a writer and that she writes sort of like think pieces and political stuff, and she's portrayed more as an activist than you get exactly in the episode, although you get that in the episode to an extent. And that I mean, the fact that, I mean, maybe it's heavy-handed, but at a certain point she literally says slavery, which, that is just, it's directly connected to what's going on. Is it a little much? Yes, but I do appreciate that all these like big themes dovetail together like that.
They've got an amazing cast, and honestly, we mentioned the Doctor. That's Sam Wanamaker, one of my favorite character actors, a formerly blacklisted actor as well, and a Chicagoan. In fact, we have downtown, right? I believe around Tribune or the Wrigley Building, we have Sam Wanamaker Lane right there, honorarily named after him. I also noticed that we should say from the plot standpoint, an entire 4 blocks of a suburb is uprooted by these aliens. I think I've got a good picture of the crater. Did I load that?
It's actually explicitly Beverly Hills. Like they, in the, which is kind of bizarre. I mean, clearly it's just that Stefano lived in Beverly Hills and he set it there. I mean, there's
Well,
no
Out the window.
Yeah.
Is Midgard Lane actually in Beverly Hills?
It's not a real.
Okay, because I mean, obviously, we all likely know that that's Norse mythology phrasing for Earth.
Yes,
I had that.
So- Jeff, we're having trouble hearing you. So if you could adjust, are you speaking on a microphone that's part of your earbuds? I don't know, but we are having trouble hearing you.
Maybe I'll go get some earbuds. Yeah, because it's real choppy
Okay.
on my end.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
But yeah, I mean, that's a thing that Stefano comes back to again in Belero Shield. The big lofty Norse sort
The
of things.
Bifrost
Yeah,
Bridge.
exactly. But like, and there is a lot of in the script, much more so. The script is 62 pages long. This one of the first scripts that he wrote for the Outer Limits. So it's you can really see that he's just he's learning what it is to write for television, writing this script when you read it. Like he has it's very verbose. There is a lot of this highfalutin sort of stylized Stefano dialogue, which I have a very much a soft spot for. But go ahead.
I was just going to say, since you just mentioned it right there, can a line that really stuck with me when he's describing the spaceship in the beginning, how it moves like a guilt memory pursued by a conscience. Like
I know it's nuts, and that's in the action, right? That's the script. That's the stuff that's basically just there to tell the the actors, the crew, whoever's working on it, how what the action is that they're supposed to be doing and seeing and stuff. That's not for public consumption, and all of it is like that. Like I can't tell. Like reading it, I can't tell if it would drive me insane working from the script or I would appreciate it. But
Did I read correctly? I'm sorry, real fast. Did I read correctly? This was Stefano's first script.
I think
for the Outer Limits.
I think it is. Yeah, I think that's correct. That it was the first one that he wrote, and that it's and I think that's kind of part of what the excitement is about it. He's like excited and hungry, and wants to get these ideas out, and is also probably not as savvy about what they can pull off and what they're going to have the money to make, and what you can and can't do. And that's like kind of a great position in a way to like come into something, especially and kind of fundamental to what I think is exciting about the Outer Limits, that it's, people who were excited and somewhat green, really going for it and making something, making something interesting, even if like they overreach very often.
Cool. Jeff, you want to try your mic and see how you sound?
Do I sound any better? It's still. I'm hearing a bunch of chop on my end. What
we can hear you.
Anything?
Yeah, you're on a little bit of a delay, but we don't hear a chop.
That's just me. But I just want to make one point that caught me off guard. And I can't remember if it's in the show or just the script, but when the doctor's riding with Cashman in the car, and Cashman accidentally stumbles across the fact that they're breaking up by saying, "Why are you breaking up?" Yeah, that was a good little human bit because I've done that several times where I've accidentally hit someone's nerve by a dumb choice of words. But then he's on. It's like, yeah, she actually says, And that caught me off guard because I was like, wait, did they actually use that term back then? I thought we all called it essays up until recently, and then someone threw think pieces out, or did it just come back?
I think it must have come back.
Is this only interesting? Probably.
Joseph Stefano tells us it just came back again, because they literally say think piece in the script. But that to the point of that scene with the two of them in the car. I mean, I think that one of the great things about this is that it's so much about how kind of dislocated everybody is. They all live in this suburban neighborhood together, but they're not. Nobody knows each other. Until this thing happens. It's not. There's a pretty obvious relationship between this and the monsters who do on Maple Street from the Twilight Zone, but I think only in a kind of superficial setup sort of way. Everything else, kind of thematically, and what it's trying to say is, I think, very different. But in that, it's about a community that turns against each other, and these people, no one knows each other. I mean, there's even another character in the script who goes into the kind of Vale area to meet the Luminoids with the Doctor, and who's not in the final episode, and they don't know who the hell they are. The second guy is going to go in with the Doctor, and the Doctor's like, no, don't come with me, and I don't even know you. And the guy's like, I live across the street from you.
Yeah.
There's all of this kind of, the alienation, that kind of post World War II alienating thing is huge in this. I got to just say, I've been listening to another podcast where they were talking a lot about the 90s, and I was alive in the 90s, but these people were not so much. And the way that they expressed their ideas of how the 90s work was so wildly off base from what I remember it actually being that I'm very, very hesitant now to ever talk about a time before I was alive with any kind of in broad terms, because anybody a little older than me will be able to tell I'm full of shit. But still, I do think that this, that like playing into that kind of Cold War anxiety and the disconnection between people and, early on, so that we can get to a place where everybody literally comes together to kill themselves in the end is great writing.
The relationship that the Doctor and Ralph had, as brief as it was, to me felt like a baton being handed off, because the way it's structured, you're with Ralph so much in the beginning and you're like, this is Ralph's story.
Right.
And then he gets mutated or exposed, and then the story hands off to the Doctor and
Wanamaker, yeah.
Yeah, and then we get more of his he carries us through to the end. Although then Ralph comes back again for that final scene.
Right. Which structurally, I think that's great. I really like the idea of slightly misdirecting us at the beginning.
Absolutely.
Although in the script, it was that opening scene where at Ralph's house was about the daughter mostly, and the daughter, like her interactions with the dad. Eventually, she sees him be. She finds him when he comes back, and he's all covered in gross stuff, which I guess it was called some kind of fine mold or something like that in the script. But we in production we turned it into kind of Rocky lava type people. But
yes.
Can we see that again, John?
Absolutely.
No. Am I wrong? Is this Robert Justman's voice and Robert Justman's body and Ben Wright's voice?
Yeah, that's right. Like supposedly the Ben Wright was cast as for this part, but he literally just wouldn't fit in. His head was too big for that mask. So Bob Justman ended up doing the physical performance.
Bob Justman, who of course is part of the crew.
Yeah, the first AD. The first AD.
Right.
Yeah.
And later instrumental to Star Trek. Both the original series and the Next Generation. And isn't it interesting that they discuss teleportation and literally 3 years prior to Star Trek are describing the molecules being turned into energy and then reforming at the other end. And obviously, I'm assuming Bob Justin passed that along to Gene Roddenberry.
Not only that, but Is this possibly the first on-screen use of the transporter effect? The
I
glitter
believe
being
so.
swirled in a liquid
Oh, yeah.
suspension?
That
It
Yeah, I
is-
looked
wish I had
exactly.
I wish I had a visual of that. I was telling everybody off there, and we'll see it, folks, on the next episode. Much like and again, I don't know if you guys find them funny, those Magnum will not be seen tonight and all that crap that I put at the beginning. I love that stuff. I found a whole slew of more stuff from the 60s, but thankfully, finally found an Outer Limits promo. It doesn't say that it will not be seen tonight, unfortunately, but they actually have a moment of the transporter that we see in Feasible Study. So that's cool. And also, I just before we continue with other things, some of the other cast members, including Joyce Van Patten, who plays Ralph's wife, and Ralph, by the way, is David Opatoshu. I hope I'm saying his name right.
I'm glad you tried to say it.
Well,
'Cause-
being Greek, I mean, we all have complicated names.
yeah.
And Opatoshu, you might recognize as we're talking about Star Trek from A Case of Armageddon, I believe is what it's called.
No, it's
A Taste of Armageddon?
A taste of Armageddon. Yeah, yeah.
Right. And that's, of course, the Star Trek episode, one of my favorites from a concept standpoint, that two planets are at war, but essentially doing a 60s techno version of Dungeons and Dragons or any sort of tabletop game where skirmishes are planned online and then they find out how many casualties they are and everyone peacefully goes to the crematorium and destroys themselves. So I love that episode, and David plays the prefect. Like, how dare you question our society? And of
Right.
course,
Yeah.
the question of the Prime Directive comes into play. So,
Were you doing an impression there? Or-
Not at
Okay. The one actually just back to Joyce Van Patten real quick.
Please.
That was a very good impression. I'm sorry, I was just being a jerk. She's Dick Van Patten's sister, right?
and yes, and Timothy Van Patten's aunt. The
Okay.
Van Pattens are kind of your second-rate Barrymores in terms of
Second
Hollywood
rate? Yeah.
Well, Hollywood family. They don't have as many, I think, family members as the Barrymores and the Carradines, but they come pretty close. And Joyce, in particular, fantastic character actor. And I believe, as Guy Grip told us on the chat, the only living cast member
Yeah.
still.
Well,
So
let's try
there's
to get her on the show.
We'll get her on the show, absolutely. But also memorable character bits in The Odd Couple and two great Columbos, where she's the villain in one, and also a great sequence. Oh, we lost Jeff for a moment again. Also a nun in a great, kind of empty scene, but a great comedy moment for Peter Falk and Joyce Van Patten, where she mistakes him for a bum and tries to get him a nicer coat than his raincoat and everything. It's one of my one of my favorite little completely standalone Columbo scenes that if they'd cut it for time would always get sliced. But she's amazing. She's always great.
Yeah, no, and she's really good in this as well. I think that so Ian, what we haven't heard as much from Ian about stuff. You read the script as well, or?
I did. The script answers one of the big I love this episode, but there's one question that you probably had, or I guess two questions watching it. Where are the children and where are the pets? I worked a little bit in Beverly Hills. I can sort of believe a lot of people in Beverly Hills wouldn't have kids just because it is a kind of, a lot of people are working. They're very career oriented. I do not believe that there's a block of Los Angeles where people don't have dogs. That, more than anything else in the Outer Limits, that strains incredulity.
Yeah.
Well, but they do explain, obviously, in the case of Wanamaker and his wife, portrayed by Phyllis Love.
Phyllis Love, yeah.
That obviously they've only been married a year. They're having marital problems, so that
Right.
certainly explains things. I can't speak for Joyce Van Patten and David.
Well,
what their
that's
deal is.
what I was saying before is that they did have a very prominently featured daughter in
Yeah.
the script, and this was a huge part of the ABC censors problem with the episode because because they were very, very nervous about putting kids in danger. So ultimately, they ended up just cutting all of those characters out, or like that daughter out, and the other kids. I mean, one of the most effectively creepy scenes in it is when the luminoid teenager is hiding in the garage or whatever it is, and like,
Isn't that him?
yes, that's it.
Yeah.
And with with that bizarre, like, treated voice and everything, and yeah, which I think is great. I love that scene. I think it's amazing.
It's so great.
Right? And
I wish you never saw him.
I agree with that as well. I would
agree.
have kept him in shadows
And
or
actually,
whatever.
in
Yeah.
the way that it's written, it feels more like the intention was that he would just kind of like dart into the car and you would never quite see him. And, I think Byron Haskin is maybe a little more flat-footed of a director than this could have used. But the it definitely would be better not to see him, but it also would have been better just thematically if we had seen real kids in the world of the thing, because and relating back to this guy, this luminoid kid, and him breaking the rules and coming into their world and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know. I mean, I do think you lose something there. There are gaps in the episode where things don't quite add up because of big cuts they made in the script. The motor in the car early on that has vanished and reappears. There's a couple other things like that, like a misspelled sign on the church and stuff that leads you to believe that they're still sort of reassembling the neighborhood, like it's not fully formed, and that's why the motor appears in the car when she's when she goes to look at it. So I mean, definitely there are gaps, there are weird things that don't quite translate, but I think the big picture of it more than compensates for that.
On the voice of the teenager, it was interesting. In the script, it was described as high pitched, and then in production,
and he was also
supposed to be low.
And he was also supposed to be a 10-year-old in the script, I believe, like much younger initially.
Just real quick, so Ian knows I'm not being rude. For some reason, I can't hear him. Obviously, you guys can, but for some reason,
I can hear.
Yes,
it's okay.
I'm not being rude if I don't react.
Ian just said it was okay.
Okay, thanks, man.
He did a William Shatner impression when he was saying it too. Apparently Leslie Stevens about the whole censorship thing said that there was enough thinking going on in The Outer Limits to worry people. Which I think is a great quote about this. I mean, they're trying. ABC was always trying to make it a kids show, make it about put monsters in the front, and clearly a lot of people. I know. I mean, when I was talking to somebody about this, and they were just under the impression that it was like a kids monster show, and it really isn't at all. And it's so much about how people perceive stuff. Like it's the like you just see they put those monsters up front, and it's like, oh well, then it's for kids, I guess. I don't know.
Where do you guys see the ABC promos that I found? Because they absolutely speak to that, and it's literally a montage of every episode and monster. So yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. But actually, just sorry to just like a personal anecdote here. I'm working on this movie, and we were having a meeting, and there was some downtime. We're just chatting, and the fact that I do this podcast came up, and one of the guys on the crew I was working with was like, he's a little bit older than us, and he was like, The Outer Limits. I watched that when I was a kid. He watched the pilot when he was 7. The galaxy being, and he said it absolutely terrified him, and like his parents were having a dinner party or something, and he was in the basement watching the episode, and he was so freaked out by it that he came up and just kind of awkwardly hung around at the dinner party, and they were like, what's going on, what's wrong? And why aren't you watching your show? And he's like, I don't know, I wasn't so interested in it, whatever. And they're like, you were scared of that, weren't you? So I mean, I guess it worked that way for kids at the time.
Giacorojo or Rojohio, I apologize as always, man, has a great question. We were going to get to it. Gabe was kind enough to point out that A Feasible Study did get remade in the 90s as Feasible Study on the 90s Canadian Outer Limits show. As some of our cast members know, I've been in damage control mode with a couple other side projects. So I did not have time to watch the 90s one, have every intention to. I will toss that to the rest of you. And if you did have a moment to watch it, what you thought of Feasible Study as opposed to A Feasible Study.
I watched it. I mean, I thought that it was not the train wreck that the other 90s episode that we watched was. I mean, it's not good, but like Stefano actually wrote the script for the 90s version as well. But it, like, or at least he's credited with it. And I feel like it has a lot of the failings of a 90s type thing. There's a lot more, even though the 60s show explains everything up front, there's a kind of, lugubrious, quality to the episode where it takes a while to get to the neighborhood being stolen, and it's shot on this garbage-looking 16 millimeter, everything is Vancouvery and gray, and and like it's just unpleasant to look at. It ultimately gets to the same point, which I think is valuable, but it doesn't work as far as like the characters, speaking to the themes of it the way that the original one does. And,
Okay.
Stefano, so Ian pointed out that there's this great Paley Center panel on the second season Outer Limits Blu-ray set, and and Stefano talked about working on this 90s version of it a little bit, and and how his hope had been that the effects. I believe everybody involved was like unhappy with how the visual effects and came off in this episode, and his hope was that it would be like somehow the effects would be better and that would make it better or whatever.
Sure.
And, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, right? And the effects are not that much better, and and like they're just dated for the 90s as opposed to dated for the 60s, and and I think that it doesn't, the things, the characters don't work with the story the way that the 60s one does.
The only 90s adaptation that I think, and I look forward to when we get to the second season to compare to the 90s version, is iRobot, which in both cases are infinitely better than the Will Smith film. And I think closer to the original intent of Asimov in the original short story. But all that said, I understand what you're saying. And yeah, I mean, a lot of times at the end of the day, it's 90s Canadian sci-fi. The one thing that I do appreciate about Canadian science fiction that is made for the Canadian audience, not just shot in Vancouver and shown everywhere, is their fearlessness in counter-programming and adherence to sci-fi, for these 30 plus years, and that they are always very ambitious with their ideas in science fiction. And I think The Outer Limits was a good attempt. And there were good, not as many good episodes, despite it lasting for, 5 or 6 seasons.
It was 7, yeah.
Was it 7?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Sure.
Like, that said, I mean, I've seen scattered episodes in the past. I've not gone back and rewatched. The only ones I've rewatched are the ones that were remade from 60s episodes for the show. So I can't speak to it at all other than that. Ian, you watched the 90s one as well, yeah?
Yes, and I talked about this a bit when we compare the two versions of Nightmare. I do have a personal nostalgia for the look of Canadian sci-fi shows because I grew up watching those kind of things.
I'm sorry, I can't.
16 millimeter and those.
I can't accept it, but go ahead. It looks horrible.
I was worried you couldn't hear me or you couldn't accept my. By the way, I know it objectively. I know it's bad.
I was just vehemently disagreeing with the idea that there's anything positive about the look of the show. Please continue with your thought.
Oh, objectively, I know it's bad, but there is something comforting about the mix of 16 millimeter and those synthy strings. Like, I know it's bad, but it's the bad I grew up on.
Yes, of course.
So the one interesting thing is this episode stars David McCallum, a vet of the classic Outer Limits, and the central relationship isn't a husband and wife; it's father and daughter, and so you do have some kids here, but they're like teens. And you have one dog. And that relationship does not have what the homes have, because the one thing that really makes the original feasibility study work is the fact that the ending is seeded with Dr. Home telling his wife, like, your fire ended up inspiring me. The thing that was the schism in their marriage, that he talks about being inspired by her after she's just been sterilized, and then that is what leads to the ending. I think it's just a great dramatic through line, and it just, I don't know what happened if they couldn't find that kind of thing, but Dave McCallum's character, like when he proposes that, the episodes have the same ending. They don't have the same characters or anything like that. So when David McCallum proposes this ending, where does it come from?
Yeah,
and
it
also,
does. Yeah.
And also, actually, that episode, I think people disagree a lot more, and it is kind of Monsters on Maple Street-esque. By the way, that comparison does that episode no favors. But I thought they were going to have, like, people disagree with the martyr plan, and maybe that'd be interesting. But they don't do that either. You do get to see the people all transform, though. Are we losing people? I'm still here.
Whoa.
Oh, no. It's just us. Can you hear me, William? This is
interesting since since I can't hear Ian, and apparently Gabriel and John.
Oh no,
really
this is
out.
enemy mine all over again. We're this is welcome to The Outer Limits without John Suttress and Gabriel Hardman. I like to think that they are just doing another podcast without us. I almost want to, like, write notes to William. Here,
I will say, while I think no one else is talking, he's holding up a message. If you something, the Outer Limits. While Ian is writing that so I can see it, I noticed the opening voiceover on this one seemed to be a little bit more personal than previous voiceovers. The control voice. Oh, what's he written here? Did you watch the 90s? I did not watch the 90s episode of Outer Limits. I think in total I've seen 2 or 3 in the course of life. The Will Wheaton one, I think, and that's so no. The answer is no. But assuming the show is continuing without Gabriel and John, I noticed the opening voiceover was a lot more personal in that the control voice said that the rock creatures should have been life that resembled ours. So he said ours, and then he said this happened to a neighborhood like mine, And I thought, oh, is this like the only time the control voice is verified as human, like as one of us, as opposed to
Yeah.
some.
By the way, can you hear me now? I changed my.
Non-corporeal being.
Can you hear me now? I know I look like the "can you hear me now" guy, but
I guess I assumed John or Gabriel would pop back in, but they have not. It's chaos here. And I have no control over any of the behind the scenes stuff. I think Ian is writing me another note. 60s on with your point. I also go on with your point. Okay. So I thought it was interesting that it seemed like the control voice was revealed as human, or not an arch non-corporeal creature, but he was humanizing himself in the opening, and then whereas before it just seemed like he was like an authorial figure removed. And assuming you can hear me, Ian, do you agree? Thumbs up from Ian. Also, I'm just going to keep talking, I guess. This had several points where obviously the last year with the pandemic really.
Is everybody back? Hold on.
I'm here.
Sorry. Did I knock you guys out for a second just now? Were you guys talking to each other?
In our fashion.
So, yeah, sorry about the gap of silence. Gabe should be joining us momentarily as well. And we will reconvene with, and here comes Gabe. So sorry about that, everybody. If you stuck with us, we apologize. And there we go, as Guy Grip says.
Right. Yeah.
So, but we're back.
We're back. Well, are we going to
continue with my thought, or
Yeah, please. I'm sorry, and no, we really do still have people watching, which is lovely to see. And thank you, everybody, for standing by. We're sorry about that. I'm hosting, and as such, the entire connection went down for a little bit.
Yes.
Or
and then there were emergencies for every single one of us. We all died, but we're now back.
Right.
I was I was saying with the pandemic this last year, there were moments towards the end that really hit differently than the first time I saw this episode, when they talked about the air here is safe, and then the doctor replied, "Is it?" And how she acquired the mutation of the rocks just by being in close proximity to the teenager, contagion in a confined space. And also when Ralph comes back at the end, and it's the priest who has to say, "Hey, this is your neighbor. Like, don't be afraid of him, merely because of his facade," and how he's been changed by the. I don't know if they gave it a name per se. I don't remember that, but just the contagion that would turn them into the rock people.
Right.
The luminarians, is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. It's luminous. It was originally Venus in the script, but they went for something more fantastic.
It's funny because when when the doctor shows up in the contemplative energy plant where they all gather around, and they say to him, "Do you know where you are?" And in the script he says hell, and I don't believe he says that in the show, but when I was watching, it felt like hell because there's just all that wonderful fog just building out, and the silhouettes, and it was just so
Yeah,
atmospheric.
and also just the highest heights of Stefano Purple Prose in it over there. Like, I mean, there's one line where one of the Luminoids says, "Minds like nuclear birds soaring
that.
to the most splendor dreamings of the universe." It's like, I mean, it's so much, and I don't have any justification for why I think it's awesome, but I do.
I could see that in a Osamu Tezuka manga, just sort of like this expansive cosmic drawing.
Mm-hmm.
Did he write prose at all, Stefano?
I don't know that he did. I think that he went from being a songwriter to writing television, like live television, like we talked about before, and then film, and then back to TV. So
because Block wrote the Psycho book. Robert Block.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah,
where Stefano wrote the screenplay. Yeah,
but I mean, I think that his sensibilities are on the florid side, and I think that '90s episode kind of, like, one of the things that there was a quote. I can't remember if it was in the show, in the the panel thing, or in the the book about the Outer Limits, but that he felt like it was a little heavy-handed, like the dialogue was way too heavy-handed in the original episode. And I think that that's a kind of self-censorship or something. It's like, when you going back to something that you wrote when you were younger and being a little embarrassed by it, and he shouldn't have been, I mean, I think that that, like, trying to kind of mute those instincts wasn't doing him any favors. A lot of that stuff was what was the value of his writing.
And beyond it being 30 years later with the Canadian version, even within those first 2 seasons of the original show, as we pointed out, one of his first scripts. So maybe, again, I think he did refine, and pare it down a little bit moving forward.
Yeah, he did.
Because the opening and I'm glad we're back to a closing comment as well from the narrator. Again, we're back in Criswellian sort of territory that, we'll be spending the rest of our lives in the future and all that stuff. So
I don't dismiss it quite as hard as you do, but I think that, I mean, even the control voice stuff is never the stuff that interests me that much in the show. Like, I've never, it's like, it's not my thing, but it's still, there certainly is a lot of overwrought stuff in that, and most of them are written by Stefano, regardless of who wrote the script. Most of the people who wrote the scripts didn't even apparently take a shot at writing the control voice stuff. So that's very much his voice.
Just quickly, something that William brought up. Something that William brought up is the control voice references his neighborhood. At the end or the beginning, or one of them, it's beginning of the neighborhood, like mine. Like, where does the control voice live?
Yes,
I thought he lived
that's
in the
right.
TV.
That's right. That actually, I noticed that too. That's hilarious.
Exactly.
Like, he's like, wait, so now the control voice is some sort of character. He I don't know. There's a whole story for the control voice that we're not getting.
He's like the Watcher in Marvel Comics. At least that's how I kind of perceived him, as just sort of this ethereal.
Yeah. What kind of neighborhood does the Watcher live in? Does the Watcher live in Beverly Hills? I don't.
My milk is delivered by the stallions of the dairy farm. Those proud animals that day to day.
Yeah.
Are here.
Now you just sound like the guy from What We Do in the Shadows. Like.
Dawn of their teams. I've never heard the term cock-a-hoop before. Maybe that's a Luminous term, but boy, I'm going to work it into every conversation moving forward.
I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna try to work in the vein flesh of men of Earth into to any possible conversation.
Did anyone else feel like the Authority was sounding a lot like David Warner? Like, at first I thought, wait, is that David Warner?
Oh,
but
that's
of course it wasn't. But his cadence, I felt like I was like in the presence of one of his great villains.
Yeah, I could see that.
Detective. Yes, absolutely. Funny. That's great. That's awesome. I was trying to bring up the IMDb page for the episode, and I'm having trouble. So I will.
Yeah, you're gonna just crash us again if you try.
Probably, exactly. You're not wrong.
I can't believe one of the best episodes is the first one that we have like a giant disaster on. But whatever.
I know.
We were too close to the truth for the
I know.
luminoids.
Yeah,
Every now and then,
This is all about the-
my internet will drop out like this. And it's happened a couple other times on live streams. It's never good. Poor Mark Wade really had to. Okay, John's gone, so I'll.
I doubt that was a problem for Mark Wade. Like I feel like he probably felt like he'd come into his own at that point.
Yeah, I'm not used to this, but here's 20 minutes on stream.
Yeah, exactly. I say it with all affection.
We love Mark. Don't kid yourself. There's he's always on word balloon. Absolutely, man. So anyway,
I have
I think we kind of did this for the most part. I think that to the extent we can consider it before this whole thing falls apart again.
Absolutely.
But does anybody have closing thoughts, William?
Can I give just one bit of trivia? The Methodist church shown at the end, which is supposedly on Earth, looked familiar to me, so I looked it up. Not that one. It's actually
it's when
at
the
end.
it's the very end.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. Go on.
And it's kitty corner to the American Cinematographer Society clubhouse. So it's just a stone's throw from the ASC, and I was just like,
so where is it then?
It's kitty corner to the American Cinematographer Society on the same block as the Magic Castle.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh wow!
So, right. Yeah. Oh, it's that one. It's the one that they
It's the
shot.
big one when you come down.
The exteriors for Back to the Future when they're at
State
the
Clock Tower.
No, that's on the Universal lot. When they're at the dance, when he's outside at the dance, that's the exterior.
It's actually
wow. Cool.
But and a million other things because it's Hollywood,
for everyone interested in those kind of landmarks that are shown on TV and film, 2 nights ago on Word Balloon, and you can find it on this very feed. I had a great conversation with documentarian Steve Dubrow, who has just completed his look at the Olympic Auditorium and its history from the 20s to today. And it's a fantastic movie. And the Olympic was used in Raging Bull. And going back to early Hollywood, the silent Buster Keaton film, Battling Butler, when they have the boxing scenes, that's at the Olympic. When the Three Stooges had boxing or wrestling scenes, they were at the Olympic. It's an incredible venue. And also, not only boxing and wrestling was held there, but also roller derby of the 70s, the LA Thunderbirds used to run there. And also in the 80s, it became quite the venue for the punk scene. And bands like X and Los Lobos and the Go-Go's and the like all played at the Olympic. It's it's called 18th and Grand. And it's just hitting the festival circuit now. Literally, they've had one showing in these COVID times. And I intend to have Steve back because literally he crams in 82 minutes all these different subjects. And you could literally spend 2 hours on boxing, wrestling, roller derby, the Hollywood connections to the Olympic, the very strong woman that from the 40s to the 80s owned the Olympic, Eileen Eaton. Amazing story. And he's got hours of interviews with everyone from sportscaster Dick Enberg, who passed away, to Roddy Piper, the wrestler that passed away, to 90-year-old Mamie Van Doren, still telling great stories about her times because she was a massive boxing fan and used to go to the Olympic all the time. Neat stuff. Really, really neat. So look for that more on this very Word Balloon channel.
Very good. Well, just in wrapping up this Outer Limits episode, I do feel like this is kind of like the epitome of the kind of humanist outer limits, the kind of that kind of deeply felt humanism that you can express through genre, and and that's it's like my favorite thing, and it's in many ways what the gothic weirdness I love, but I also just love that kind of dramatic,
there we go,
personal humanist stuff that that was really important to the show.
It's so affecting when at the end he says, "Take my hand."
Yes.
Will someone take mine? And you just have that chain of people.
And speaking to what you're saying about, our modern pandemic moment, just this very, ultimately very earnest idea of everybody, sacrificing themselves, for the greater good is
Doing
so
what
much
you need
more than
to.
we seem to be able to expect these days.
Agreed. And Guy Grip says this episode is cream of the crop. I think it's one
Well,
of
I
the.
mean, look, it's lasted for 50 years, so it's got to be good on some level.
100%.
Aspirational.
Well, and with that, we will leave you and prepare for episode 30 next week. We'll see what we have to say about that. What is the title of next week's episode, Gabe?
It is
Decay of small particles. What's it called?
production and decay of something. Hold
Small
on.
particles.
Article.
This was a backdoor pilot. This is Leslie Stevens.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the
Let it
other
in.
show that Stefano was trying to develop, and like you said, the backdoor pilot for said program.
This was
But this is a different one than that. The very last one is a backdoor pilot for Stefano. This is one for another Leslie Stevens, right?
Oh, okay, even better.
Wow.
Okay, great. Well, that'll be fun to compare both of those to what we've got.
Sorry, so it's production and decay of strange particles.
Okay, fair enough.
Beautiful.
We have never quite gotten it right there. So
So literally, we have 2 left of the first season, and then we'll be
Three.
3.
3 left.
The chameleon is between these two.
Robert
Oh,
Duvall.
of course.
Robert
Yes,
Duvall.
okay. Yes, Robert Duvall. So
Yeah.
that'll be fun to watch. I
Yeah.
love watching early Duvall television. Twilight Zone,
Yeah, he was good.
Combat, you name it. So
Yeah, and so hopefully, in theory, when we get to the end of the season, I'd definitely like to cover a couple of, like a different, there are multiple other things that we probably ancillary, almost the outer limits kind of things that would be great to cover as well.
No, you want to do that as a bridge to the second season?
Yeah, I think so because
I have no problem with that.
Because it connects directly to the people who made this season, not the people who made the second season. So
Understood.
I think it makes the most sense to do like the couple of bonus episodes about these things that are more or less outer limits episodes, but just in some different form.
Would that include the Martin Landau ghost?
yeah.
Do you know what I'm
Absolutely,
talking about?
that's the main one. Yeah, the
Okay.
the haunting, whatever it's called. Yeah, the ghost of something. Yeah,
And that movie is on YouTube. Am I correct?
Yes, I think the television version of it is.
Okay, good.
And there's also a Blu-ray out there that has both versions. Of it.
Sure, but I mean, at least
but
for
it is
fewer...
accessible to people. Is the point? Yeah, it is accessible on YouTube, I believe.
So, and again, for people watching and don't know, Roku is running Outer Limits currently, and a lot of the first season episodes and maybe second season as well are on Daily Motion's video platform as well.
But the thing that I didn't quite understand until now, because I guess I'm just not a very good podcaster, is that the Roku channel stuff, you can just watch that on a browser, right? You don't need to be subscribed to anything. You don't need a Roku box. You just
is that the case?
Yeah. Just watch. You can. That's how I watched the '90s episode. You can watch it for free. Both William and I tweeted links to the episode before this. So at least in the future, I'll make an effort to point people in the direction of actually being able to watch the episode for free in a completely legal way.
No, that's great to hear. And God, again, that's why I love Tubi and Roku and all the other free streamers. And if you can tolerate commercials, there's a lot of good stuff on there, folks, that you don't have to spend $10 or $5 a month to watch. So streaming's all right. So there you go.
All right.
Fair enough. I'm looking on the comments because I think a few more popped up. There, of course, another thing we might have to watch is Incubus.
That is another of the definitely Leslie Stevens Esperanto epic Incubus, also shot by Conrad Hall, starring William Shatner. 100% we have to cover that. I think that's out on YouTube as well.
I'm pretty sure it is as well.
Although I know I have a DVD from the 90s.
Yes.
Yeah. So there, I mean, a couple of things like that are very Outer Limits oriented. I mean, certainly, I would think that, it's not as much of a genre thing exactly, but the Leslie Stevens feature that he made before this, the Private Property, I think it's called, is also something that would be worth it. It has multiple Outer Limits connections as well.
Completely agree. All right, boys. We will return control of your streaming and internet services to you, and we look forward to talking again next week as we travel once again to the Outer Limits. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy. Bye bye.